Hi, I'm Jonathan Netzer, Tabor's Product Marketing Manager, and welcome to Tabor's Product Video Tutorials. Today, we'll learn about how to simply set the run mode in Tabor's WaveXciter series. The WX series of arbitrary waveform generators allows you to generate output waveforms continuously or in a response to internal and external signals. To set the run mode, press the Run Mode button in the control menu. There are three selectable run modes. Continuous mode, in which the AWG generates waveforms at its output terminals continuously, without a specified starting or stopping point. Triggered mode. In triggered mode, output remains at a specific DC level and waits for a valid trigger event to initiate a complete output waveform. At the end of the output cycle, the output resumes position at a DC level that is equal to the amplitude of the first point of the waveform. Gated mode, in which the output remains at a DC level and waits for a valid gate event to output waveforms. When the gate closes, the output completes the waveform and returns to a DC level that is equal to the amplitude of the first point of the waveform. By default, the instrument is set to continuous run mode. In continuous run mode, you can set the enable mode. In self-arm mode, waveforms are generated continuously at the output terminals as soon as the output function is selected and the output is turned on. In arm mode, the generator transitions from idle to waveform generation immediately upon receipt of an enable signal, and ceases waveform generation immediately upon receipt of an abort signal. If arm mode was selected, choose an enable source to specify the source of the enable signal. Bus, to send the enable signal using remote PC commands. Event, to transmit the enable signal via the AWG's rear panel event in connector using an external source. Or trigger, to trigger using the front panel manual trigger button. If the event source was chosen, specify the event input controls, threshold level, and transition type. To configure triggered run mode, press the trigger menu button. Here you can configure the trigger option, trigger parameters, and the smart trigger. The trigger option mode can be set to normal or override. In normal trigger mode, every trigger generates a waveform segment. However, new triggers are ignored for the duration of the current waveform output. In override mode, a new trigger immediately restarts the current segment, regardless of whether the current segment has been completed or not. The trigger source can be set to either external for triggering through the trigger in connector, bus for triggering using remote PC control, internal for triggering the unit internally, and event for triggering through the event in connector. The trigger parameters that can be configured are: trigger level, specify the valid trigger threshold level; slope, set whether the unit is triggered on the rising edge, falling edge, or both; delay, to delay the trigger by a specified number of sample clock cycles; timer, sets a fixed time interval from each waveform start to the next waveform start. This is enabled in internal trigger mode only. Count sets the number of times the segment is generated from a single trigger. The smart trigger capability of the WX instruments enables triggering the unit on specified pulse widths. Maximum time specifies the maximum pulse width for the trigger signal to be valid. Minimum time, this specifies the minimum pulse width for a trigger signal to be valid. When both are enabled, the pulse width has to be within the minimum and maximum values. The trigger hold-off parameter specifies the time interval during which the system ignores additional triggers. Following the time interval, new triggers are accepted. To configure gated run mode, press the gated menu button in the Run Mode menu. Specify the threshold level and slope. Thank you for joining me on this tutorial, and be sure to visit our YouTube channel for more product video tutorials.
Tabor Electronics, a high-end, world-leading signal source company.